Since Express is by design minimalistic, the framework offers the possibility for developers to intercept an incoming HTTP request before it reaches the endpoint's controller using a special type of function called a middleware. These middleware functions can be used for a variety of actions, such as logging an incoming request, verifying its header, or parsing its payload, and can be chained all together to form what's called a middleware stack.
Just like any other request listener, a middleware function has access to the request and response objects, as well as an additional parameter named next, and can essentially do two things. It can terminate the request-response lifecycle by sending an immediate response to the client using one of the methods of the response object, such as send or send status, or it can forward the request to the next middleware or controller in the call stack by invoking its next argument, as without it the request will be left hanging until it times out. Also note that any modifications made to the request or response objects, like the addition of a new property, will be preserved and passed on to each component of the middleware stack, like for example a timestamp property added to the request object.
That being said, there are essentially three ways to load middlewares in Express: at the route level, the application level, and the router level.
A route-level middleware is a function that is bound to a specified route by passing it as an argument of this route between the path string and the controller, where method is a function representing an HTTP verb such as get or post, path is a string of characters representing an URN, middleware is a middleware function, and handler is a request listener function. To illustrate this, we can use the following application that implements a get route that responds with an HTTP 200. To log every incoming request that reaches this endpoint and forward the request to the next component in the call stack, which is the controller, we can use the following logger middleware function and mount it right after the route path as follows. If we now run the script and execute the following curl command in a second terminal window, we can see that the application executes the console log in the logger function, forwards the request using the next handler, executes the second console log in the controller function, and finally responds to the client using the send status handler. An application-level middleware is a function that is bound to the application object through its use method, where path represents an optional mount path, a pattern, a regular expression, or an array of combinations of these three, and callback represents a single middleware function or a series of middlewares. To illustrate this, we can use the following application that implements two get routes that both respond with an HTTP 200. To log every incoming request that reaches the application, regardless of which endpoint it is routed to, and forward the request to the controller, we can use the following logger middleware function and mount it to the root path, symbolized by a /character, through the use method of the application instance. Note that since Express loads and executes each declaration from the top down, it is important to declare the application-level middleware before the routes, as otherwise no request will ever pass through it, resulting in the middleware being purely and simply ignored. We can now run the following commands in a second terminal window, and as you can see, the logger function successfully prints the method and the path of the request on both endpoints. In Express, a router is an isolated object that can be thought of as a mini application capable of performing middleware and routing functions. It allows to group together several routes belonging to the same business domain under a common mount path and apply a specific set of middleware functions to these routes without affecting the other ones. To illustrate this, let's consider the following application. Since a router behaves like a sort of middleware, we can group these routes under a common mount path, such as /articles, by first creating a new route using the router function exported by the Express module, and then mounting it to the application by invoking the use method we've seen in the previous part. Once we've done that, we can now apply any middleware function we want to the route contained in the router object through the use method without affecting any other routes. And as you can see here, the logger is indeed called on both routes when sending the following requests.